Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today. It's Tuesday, February 5th, 2013. My website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube it's ddarko2012, ddarko2013. Those are my YouTube channels. And I should be able to get the links in there, but like I said, I can't guarantee them anymore at this particular point. Just with the internet and that, it just kind of cuts in and out. Obama passes legislation to lift debt ceiling. So obviously we're going to cover the economy in this, and a little bit of eugenics. Obama has passed legislation that suspends the nation's borrowing limit. Of course, this is a solution and a good thing, right? Averting a default and pushing debt talks until later this year. It postpones the $16 trillion limit on federal borrowing until May 18th. And at the same time urges lawmakers to adopt whatever budget resolution, which is pretty... This comes while on May 19th, the debt limit will be raised, allowing the government to have access to approximately $450 billion to avert default. Nearly half of Americans' families live on edge of financial ruin. In the past few years, Americans have learned a thing or two about quickly and how quickly disaster can strike. So it goes on and talks about all this stuff due to economic engineering, weather modification engineering. But a new report shows nearly half of U.S. households don't have enough savings to weather emergencies or finance long-term needs like college tuition, healthcare, and housing. So we've already pretty much covered this before, but I'll move on. More than 30% don't even have a savings account, and another 8% don't bank at all, which I don't think is necessarily an indicator that they're in bad shape if they don't bank. There's plenty of the middle class have joined the ranks of the working poor, struggling right alongside families, scraping by on food stamps and other forms of public assistance. It says those that are earning $55,000 to $90,000 annually have less than 3 months of savings, and another quarter of households are considered net worth asset poor, meaning that they have few assets, such as savings accounts or durable assets like a home, business, or car, are overwhelmed by debt, the study shows. Gasoline at highest price ever for this time of year. U.S. drivers are now paying more to fill up their gas tanks than they ever have at this time of year. The national average price of retail gasoline posted its biggest one-day increase in 23 months on Friday, rising 4 cents to $3.46 a gallon. The average price has risen 13 cents, a 4% increase in the past week. Then they go on there and give the same BS reasons: refinery issues and speculation about refinery issues and demand, but the key word is speculation. It's all speculation. So gasoline, and people like Goldman Sachs, companies, not people, but companies make a lot of money off speculating with food prices where people are starving. So gasoline costs take biggest share of household income in 3 decades. The trip to the gasoline pumps in 2012-2008 took their biggest share of U.S. household income in several decades. The Energy Department's statistical arm reported that the average household spent $2,912 for gasoline in 2012, which makes up almost 4% of pre-tax income, tying 2008 for the highest percentage in roughly 30 years. And U.S. retail gas prices, it's $3.60 for a week of February 4th, 2013, the average. There's a chart going back to July 2011, which we'll probably be heading towards in the spring and summer here. But you can go in there, a link will be posted, and it goes all the way back to February of 2012, which was at $3.78, going through March, April, May, around $3.80, $3.90, and then it came down a little bit in June of 2012, and it started to go back up in late summer of 2012, back up to $3.90, $3.80 for a while there, August, October 2012, and then the later part of the year, December, these weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 6, 7 weeks, it was down to $3.30. So I guess that was a Christmas holiday present from our slave masters, so we can divert that money into going and shopping at Target and stuff like that. It's kind of the sad part. It's like we're all constantly going to be supporting this the system of control as long as we stay on the grid and all that. But I would imagine it's people say, yeah, it's easy to do, and it is easy, but when you're in the situation like most people are, where they can't pull away from their jobs because they have families to support, it's not easy anymore. So it is kind of like being coerced into it. Argentina freezes supermarket prices to halt soaring inflation. So it says chaos to follow. Up until now, Argentina's descent into hyperinflation with crashing currency and loss of outside funding was relatively moderate and controlled. It says it's all about to change. Today, in a futile attempt to halt inflation, the government announced a 2-month price freeze on supermarket products. What consumers will certainly do is scramble into local stores to take advantage of artificially controlled prices, knowing very well they have 2 short months to stock up on perishable goods. As photos of empty shelves from Buenos Aires start to pop up in a few days, comparable to how threats of a gun and weapon ban by the U.S. government did more for the top and bottom line of U.S. arms dealers than any military conflict ever could. Then we have the Hugo Chavez social revolution. That's Goldman Sachs, about 15% a year from the 31st of January. It says Wall Street and Bolshevik Revolution, the remarkable true story of the American capitalist who financed the Russian communists by Anthony Sutton. So it goes on here, says since taking office in 1999, Chavez has spread his socialist revolution in Venezuela by seizing more than 1,000 companies for bondholders that stuck by him. He has also delivered returns that are double the emerging market average. It says the 681% advance, equal to 14% annually, has enriched investors from Oppenheimer funds to Goldman Sachs that counted on Chavez's willingness to siphon the country's oil wealth to pay its creditors in the face of start-stop growth and falling reserves, while his policies drove away enough investors to keep Venezuela's borrowing cost over 12% on average during his tenure, or 4 percentage points higher than those of developing nations. He's never missed a bond payment. This Sarah Zervos, a debt manager at New York-based Oppenheimer Funds, says Chavez hasn't done a lot of good for his country, but he has the objective to service the bonds. Our interests are aligned. And links should be posted. We'll see, though, but you can go there and check out this article. It's pretty long. Rise of the Droids. Will robots eventually steal our jobs? I've been covering this for a while now, but robots basically replacing workers now. So we've entered a period in human history when technology is advancing at an exponential rate. In some ways, this has been a great blessing for humanity. It goes on here and it says that many jobs, of course, well, we already know have been outsourced to other countries. But it goes on, it says, for employers, robots provide a lot of advantages to human workers. They never complain, they never get tired, they never need vacation, they never show up late, they never waste time on Facebook, and they don't need any health benefits. And there's a whole lot of rules, regulations, and taxes that you must deal with when you hire a human worker. In the past, robots were exceedingly expensive, but they've become more advanced and less expensive. They ask the question, will there eventually come a point where the human worker is virtually obsolete? Goes on and says, what happens when we get to the point where super intelligent robots are more efficient at everything? What will be left for human workers to do? It says, and if human workers are no longer needed for most tasks, what will their role in society be? A lot of the jobs that are disappearing, thanks to advances in technology, are high-paying jobs. It says, in fact, one recent study of employment from 20 countries discovered that almost all the jobs disappearing are in industries that pay middle-class wages ranging from $38,000 to $68,000. So they go on and actually give a price, how they cost $22,000 to produce. So, and it says eventually these things will perform tasks even more cheaply than Chinese workers do. So it says it won't just be American workers that will be displaced by robots. It will literally be workers all over the planet. In the future, when you call someone for customer service, you probably won't be talking to someone in India. It says instead you'll be talking to a robot. And they already have this. I think it's at, I remember seeing a video. It was at a museum or something like that. That little blue genie lady is actually at the desk. And then, of course, you have holograms at the airports. You actually have border immigration, U.S. immigration customs offices that are unmanned now on the border. A recent Wired article described what this transition might look like. They're talking about what will the world look like as robots begin to replace humans in just about every industry that you can imagine. First, machines will consolidate their gains in already automated industries. After robots finish replacing assembly line workers, they will replace the workers in warehouses. Speedy robots able to lift 150 pounds all day long will retrieve boxes, sort them, and load them onto trucks. Fruit and vegetable picking will be done by robots until no humans pick outside of specialty farms. Pharmacies will feature a single pill dispensing robot. They actually already have that. They have robots for prisoners, I think in Korea, and also they're creating robots to replace nurses. And there's already robots that are actually giving out medication. So it goes on here and it says, next, the more dexterous chores of cleaning and offices and schools will be taken over by late-night robots, starting with easy-to-do floors and windows, and eventually getting the toilets. The highway legs of long-haul trucking routes will be driven by robots embedded in truck cabs. UK rail fares exceed cost of living. The cost of rail fares on the UK busiest routes have risen 3 times faster than the cost of living in 20 years. Figures reveal that a journey from London to Manchester will cost £50 and 95 now costs £154, representing a rise of 208%. I just learned that taxes in Chicago, property taxes actually went up 3 times the amount. So from like 1,000 to a little under 1,500 within like a 5-year period. Then you have disused garages to be turned into £11 a week pop-up homes in bid to solve London's housing crisis. The architects plan for tiny flats on East London housing estate. So they're going to convert disused garages into a row of miniature homes. Tenants will have to pay just £11 a week for the mini houses, which are set to cost around $13,000 to convert. Then you have the rise of permanent temp economy. So it goes on here and it says that the 1/3 adults who live in poverty are working but do not earn enough to support themselves and their families. A quarter of jobs in America pay below the federal poverty line for a family of 4, which is $23,000. Not only are many jobs low wage, they're also temporary jobs and insecure. So over the last 3 years, the temp industry added more jobs in the U.S. than any other. So as low-wage temporary jobs have become so widespread that they threaten to become the norm, but for some reason, this isn't causing a scandal. At least in the business press, we are more likely to hear plaudits for lean and mean companies than angst about changing nature of work for ordinary Americans. We have student loan bubble forces Yale and Penn State to sue their own students. So Zero Hedge has been talking about the bubble of credit being blown into the economy via student loans, and they also talk about the dramatic rise in delinquencies among these loans. We're talking about these so-called Perkins loans for students with extraordinary financial hardships have seen defaults surging more than 20%. It goes on here and it says, while financially hard-up graduates complain of no jobs, the schools are not impressed, saying you could take a job at Subway or wherever to pay the bills. Actually, you can. You can go there and apply, and you'll be overqualified. It seems like basic responsibility to me, but perhaps that is the point. Avoiding responsibility is seemingly rewarded in the new normal. 31st of January, larger student loan debts, less ability to repay. Americans now owe an average of $27,000 in student loans, as the delinquency rate has increased by more than 47% since 2005. Then from the 23rd of January, I've been holding on to this article. Law school recalls grades because teachers couldn't figure out how to inflate them in time. So it's a pretty interesting scandal, they say. And it goes on here and it says that they received their grades over Martin Luther King Day weekend only to have the school recall them because professors had trouble using a grading curve to inflate the grades. In an email, the dean of students explained that the school policy allows teachers to use a grading curve to inflate grades, but not all of the teachers understood the system. So I guess they're basically trying to improve the university's reputation. Speaking of reputation at universities, German education minister stripped of doctorate. So it says here the education minister was stripped of her doctorate Tuesday after a committee of academics concluded that she plagiarized substantial parts of her 1980 thesis. So I think this is like the second professor out in Germany that's been stripped of her doctorate due to plagiarism. Then Chicago expected to tie the record for lack of snow from January 8th. 319 days without an inch of snow falling. It ties a record set in 1940, although I heard a local broadcast and it said 1890. So I remember I said, watch, they'll start spraying, and they did. February 4th, a month later, Chicago sees biggest snow this season, 2.6 inches. The study says global warming can be slowed by working less. A new analysis suggests that a more European schedule would reduce the effects of climate change. Like I said, as long as they keep spraying aerosols, i.e. chemtrails, no, it's not going to do a damn thing. Former CEO of Playboy blames Chicago's murder rate on climate change, saying increased temperatures led to the heightened levels of violence. Schwarzenegger calls for hip and sexy environmentalism, or ecofascism. China one-child policy enforcer runs over a baby. And a student is suspended after his desktop background had a picture of a gun on it. This is GGN. Thank you.